Is it good?
Huh?
Is this good?
Yeah, why you always vaping right when we're getting ready to record?
Because we're about ready to get record, so I got to get
This
it
was
in.
the last one I just watched. He was vaping
I know.
right before you were getting.
I didn't know he was
didn't
recording.
even edit it. He
Yeah, I
just
know.
left it
I
in
saw
there.
at the beginning. Like,
It looked horrible for you.
Good.
did it really?
Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah, and I'm not going to edit
shut
this
it
one
off.
either.
All right.
Here we are, Real Recovery Talk. I am your host, Tom Conrad. In today's episode, we've got Stevie Buckets.
Glad to be here.
Steve. Oh,
It's
you're
weird
funny.
when the camera's in front of you, you know? Like, I
The
don't-
camera isn't in front of you. Keith is in front of you. Keith is our guest today.
How you doing, guys?
What's up, Keith? First things first, thank you for tuning in on the podcast app, whichever one that you choose to use. Thank you for watching on YouTube. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you could always reach us. info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, it's info@realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message, right, Buckets?
Absolutely.
Need you to speak up a little bit, Buckets, or get that mic in front of you.
Absolutely.
There you go. Keith, did you know we call him Buckets?
I was wondering why, because I'm sure he's never made a bucket in his life in basketball.
I have. I made a few yesterday, actually.
Oh, yeah.
I had
mean,
a game-winning shot,
He did have the game-winning shot yesterday.
and then the next game, I feel my two-pointers kind of sparked a comeback. I'm just saying.
Your fadeaway.
Well, I wasn't a fadeaway. It was just
I had
more
a
of
nice fadeaway.
Yeah,
yesterday.
Tom was killing it. I don't know what got into Tom.
I was
but he
on,
was,
and I rolled my foot, so now I can't walk. So,
You walked pretty good when I saw
well, I mean, it's it hurts. I'm fine. Couple weeks, I'll be good.
Yeah.
You play basketball?
No.
No. Oh well.
No. The only thing I didn't really excel in for sports was
Yeah.
basketball. I can shoot. I can shoot really well, but dribbling and shooting is too much.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm awful. Don't get me wrong. Usually, it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek type thing, but I have my moments. It's just fun to get out there, especially like for me. I took it for granted. I'm 38 now. When like you could play all the time when you're a kid or whatever. You know what I mean? And then coming here because we do like adventure groups and stuff, or like basketball or football or volleyball. You know what I mean? It's like a lot of the young kids. I feel like when they're like, I'm not going to do that. It's like they don't appreciate that. When you're 38, it's not like you have all these opportunities to do that again.
Yeah, exactly. Today when I got to tell you though, I felt like I could probably run a full game of basketball and then do some soccer after my first ice plunge today.
After your first what?
Ice plunge.
Oh, are you into that right now?
As of today, yeah. So
Okay,
I went into my first one. I got Steve coming with me, I think Friday.
Damn, you didn't forget about that, did you?
Yeah, I didn't forget about that. And it was crazy.
Yeah.
And afterwards.
Did you buy one? Or do you have
No. I have a membership for a new place.
Okay.
And it's unlimited. And I did the infrared sauna. And then after that, I went and did the ice plunge.
Nice.
Incredible.
Ice plunge is like it's a big thing right now. Have you ever done it, Steve?
I have not, and I've heard it was. I've heard it's kind of like in the genre with isolation tank and all these type of things. And I know I have people who rave about it, but like, it actually is something I have wanted to try. But one of those things I don't going to have the opportunity to do it.
Well,
I was
tell you
gonna
what.
seek it out.
Until Friday.
Yeah,
Then
till
you
Friday.
have the opportunity.
From what I've seen and heard, I've never done. I mean, I take cold showers most of the time for this purpose, but I haven't gotten the guts to do an ice plunge. Not that I wouldn't do it. I just really haven't had the opportunity to, because I don't know anybody with an ice plunge machine or whatever they're called. Ice tub. But the cold showers, I take them at night because they help me sleep a lot better. And there's a lot of, I'm reluctant to say that there's science to back it up, but there's something to it. And everybody that I've heard or talked to that are big into ice plunge, like Joe Rogan talks about it all the time.
All the time.
There's nothing like it. When you get out and you feel good, energized, and like a lot of people are using it to cut out coffee. They don't need coffee anymore. And so there's definitely something to it. We had a friend of ours come on the podcast, a month ago or so, Matt Williams. He's the founder of FroPro. Have you heard of FroPro?
No.
They're like, how's he say it? They're delicious peanut butter snacks. He started essentially a snack company, and they're in like Whole Foods and stuff. But he's like a ambassador for Ice Barrel, and he's doing them every morning.
At his house.
He has a gym in Boca somewhere, I think. I don't know. But anyways, he does them a lot, and he swears by them.
Yeah, today she brought me into the suite, a little suite, and she goes, all right, there it is, and just sit on the back and just take the leap. And she shut the door, and I was listening to Rogan where he was telling, I believe, Shane Gillis, that, you know, he didn't have the balls to go in and do this. And it was in my mind, and I was by myself. And at first I was like, well, no one will know if I don't do this. And then I was like, I got to do it. And I jumped in. I was in for like 30 seconds. I jumped out because it hurt. And it's common, they told me, is your ankles because there's not a lot of blood circulation there.
Okay.
So immediately my ankles were aching. Got out, and then I was like, oh, man, I set my timer for 3 minutes. So I jumped back in again. Which
You did it for
probably
3
worse.
minutes for the first time?
I jumped out after 30. I probably got about 2 minutes in.
Wow.
2 minutes, yeah. So I'm thinking it's like 11 minutes a week is good, which I felt amazing when I left there. Like,
Yeah,
amazing.
it's funny. You called me while you're in the sauna, just hating your life, and you're
Oh,
like,
yeah,
this
in the
thing's
sauna, I
going
was
so
hating my
slow. But then after, I mean, there's a. I guess you said science. You know, maybe there is a. It sounds like there is in terms of the heat and the getting the toxins out, and then jumping into the.
cold
They do
plunge.
it that way for a reason. Yeah, you sounded completely different.
Yeah,
you know,
I know.
afterwards.
Before and yeah, in the sauna, I was talking to him like misery. I had misery in me, and afterwards, I was like, "Hey, what's up, man? What are you doing?" All
Yeah, so how'd
excited.
you feel after when you got out of the cold plunge? Like, what was that like?
It releases your endorphins, and you feel like really energized and that you can take on the world. That's why I would definitely run a full game of basketball at that time, and that's probably the only time I'd run a full game of basketball.
Hang on, pause. Do me a favor. See this nozzle on the side there?
This.
Yeah, loosen that and kind of like straighten the mic and go, like straight into it. Get it as close to you as you can because you're a light talker. For now, you are.
Okay.
I'm sure it'll ramp up here.
Right
as we
there?
go. Yeah.
I hope you edit this part out of me pulling.
Is that good?
Yeah, that's fine. Is that better?
That's better.
All right.
Yeah, good. Because otherwise, then I'm adjusting the levels over
Okay,
here the
no
whole time.
problem. Yeah, so before we get going, I mentioned my 9-year-old. She said, "Dad, you got to mention me." So shout out to my daughter Faith.
Shout out
I
to
had
Faith.
do it.
Hello, Faith.
And KJ,
KJ and Katie, my 3 kids.
Katie, of course.
Yep.
Faith, KJ, and Katie. Right?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Well, Keith, thanks for coming on. I'll be honest, I never met you, obviously, and but I've heard a lot about you from Steve. Pretty much all good stuff. There was a couple things that were like, I'm just kidding.
In Michigan.
Yeah,
Yeah, he told me about the incident in
Yeah.
Michigan.
there's
that-
no incident.
and he has some regrets on that. but
He
he's-
should.
No, but from what I understand, you have a heck of a story. And let me say this: a lot of our listener base is families and loved ones. A lot of drug addicts, a lot of alcoholics, but our primary, I would say, listener base is going to be families and loved ones, people that are dealing with people like us. A lot of parents reach out, send emails, call us. Hey, I got somebody that, is just driving me crazy. I don't know what I can do. Now I'm calling you, reaching out to you for help. I say that for the point of really no point, just to tell you that's who a lot of our listeners are.
Well, I've dealt with both parts of that with my mom.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, so I guess to start, and Steve, obviously you guys are like best friends or whatever. So you guys feel free, steer the conversation however you see fit. I'm gonna obviously interject some too, but definitely want to hear a lot about your story, and then get into the recovery component of it because you have, I think you said you're coming up on 15 years clean.
Yes, March 24th. I'll have 15 years.
That's awesome, and came basically from nothing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so let's get into it. Let's just jump right in. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, how old you are. It's not like an NA meeting or an AA meeting. It's, well,
More
I'm going to
open.
cut in. Steve's going to
Sure,
cut in.
that's great. I'm from Providence, Rhode Island. I grew up in an old school Irish Italian neighborhood. I was born to a mom that had me at 18 years old. She was using at the time, and she was out prostituting. When I was born at 3 weeks old, she went to my grandmother and said, I can't do this, which I I believe she couldn't at 18 years old and with a drug problem. So she gave me to my grandmother, and my grandmother struggled to make ends meet. She was a private nurse for an agency, and when she wasn't doing that, she was taking care of myself, trying to take care of my mom. My mom was in and out of prisons my whole life. And, you know, when my mom would watch me, my grandmother would come home, and my mom, when I was 3 years old, would have me smoking weed, watching Bugs Bunny. So to calm me down, which I wasn't really a hyper kid anyway, so I don't know why she did this. I think it was for the amusement with her friends to have me smoking weed.
Oh, my God.
And that was at 3. And then probably by 12, in my neighborhood, I started hanging with the older kids that were like 16 to 18. And I started freebasing cocaine with them.
Wow.
And, yeah. So that's the start. Always as a little kid visiting my mom's in prisons. She figured out that when they would have parent day, I could go in, I could bring in drugs. They wouldn't check me because I was a child. And then she'd get them off me and tell me, you know, go ahead, go home. We're near the holidays, and it's kind of funny now, but it's not when you're like 5 or 6. I remember a lot of times, like, my grandmother would save up to get me gifts for Christmas, and by noon they were gone and sold. Mm-hmm. Or she'd tell me that if Santa came to our house, he'd be arrested for breaking and entering. So I never, I dealt with that for a while. I've worked through it. Just a lot of trauma as a kid, which a lot of us go through. If I was acting up, I remember I was riding around a tricycle around the table, and she told me, Kitty, stop, Kitty, stop. And I was like 4 or 5. And she stuck out her hand, and she grabbed the tricycle. And my mom was a big, tatted, like, biker chick. So she always was knocking guys, and she was a bouncer in nightclubs. And she grabbed the tricycle, and she threw it. And the wheel, it was the old school tricycle, so real tires, some like those cement rock hard tires, was on the outside of the house, stuck through the wall. And she grabbed my kitten, and she held it against the wall, and she grabbed the butcher knife, and she fastly stabbed around it to get me to pay attention. And I remember to this day, like, every jab, you're hoping she doesn't hit your little kitten as a little boy that you love.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
well, I mean, if anything sets the tone, that does. Going through that process, I mean, it sounds like drugs was a part of your story from the very beginning.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I decided that, going through it with my grandmother used to work in the day. And then my mom, and again, coming from an Irish-Italian neighborhood, we had people that she had borrowed money from my mother. And if she didn't pay it back, there'd be repercussions. So my grandmother, the only way she could figure out to make ends meet was to sell her prescription Vicodin in the donut shop in the neighborhood every day. So I'd sit there and watch. She'd sit at the one of the booths in there, and the guys through the neighborhood would come in, and she would sell her prescriptions to the guys to make ends meet so we could eat.
Oh, well, our stories are somewhat similar in the sense of my mom was a drug addict, big time. Now, my mom did me did me good by leaving when I was 2. She took my sister and left and went to Arizona, left me with my dad. I grew up with my dad, had a great life, so on and so forth. Fast forward to last year, I had met my sister twice my whole entire life. And she was 1, I was 2 when my mom took her. And, well, it would have been 2 years probably. Now, my sister found me on Facebook. And just through a like a long story, essentially, she's been strung out on drugs for a long time, my sister. And so I got her a scholarship at Banyan treatment centers. Mind you, I hadn't seen my sister. The last time I saw her, I was probably 15 years old, and I'm now 39, and she's 38. She would have been 36 at the time. Well, in that process, I got to talking to her, and like the craziest thing is that like even though we hadn't met each other twice, really, I went, talking to her on the phone. It was like we've talked our whole entire lives.
That's crazy.
Super strange. And when she got to Banyan, I went there and saw her literally for the first time ever in our adult lives. And I got chills thinking about it. And, whatever, got hugs and everything. And then she started telling me the shit that our mom did. Very similar. Same stuff. I mean, she would leave my sister places while she would go and use drugs. She would prostitute my sister out, and shit like that. Which the odds of my sister listening to this are extremely slim, because I haven't. To wrap that story up, I got her the scholarship at Banyan, and she ended up going to Wayside House. I got her into Wayside House after doing 45 days at Banyan. She went to Wayside House and AMA'd after like 3 days. And I haven't talked to her since. So, and my mom died. She died in 2016, I believe, from heart issues, but she was a drug addict forever. So I say she did me a service by leaving me with my dad. Exactly. She could have took both of us, but I was at daycare. And my dad picked me up from work. And we grew up in Ohio, or Pennsylvania/Ohio. At the time, I was in Ohio. Yeah, and she was gone. Went to Arizona. And I didn't see her or my sister for 12 years after that. I saw her, I think, when I was like 14, 12 or 14. And then I think when I was like 16. And then when I was 37,
I remember being a kid and AIDS had spread. This is when AIDS came around when I was younger. God, I'm old. So when
How old are you?
I'll be 50 in February.
No shit.
Yeah.
Well, you don't look it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I don't act it either.
That's true.
So I was at a wake for my friend's dad who had died from AIDS, and I was with my mother. And can you hear me great?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm there, and I remember this so vividly. And my friend is rubbing his dad in the casket, like touching his face. And my mother says, I was 17. My mother says to me, "Is it crazy that that's not his dad and he doesn't know?"
Oh, wow.
And I looked at her like, what? And she goes, his mother was prostituting when she had him, and they didn't want him to know. And he stepped up to be his dad. And he never knew this. And 2 weeks later, she calls me to meet her somewhere at this doctor's office to take blood from me. And when I go there, I'm like, why are we here? And she said, we're testing for your biological father. And the lady, I'm sitting in the seat, and she takes the blood, and she looks at me and goes, "You look just like him." She goes, "Do you want to see him?" And they took a picture of him, Polaroid. I'm really old. And in the chair I was sitting in, this gentleman was sitting in a week before giving blood. And it was the guy that they thought was my dad. And we were twins looking at the picture. And it came back like 99 point something percent. He was my father. But the thing is that when he met my mom, it was as a business relationship, so to speak, that night. And he was already married and had kids. And I found his number. The nurse gave it to me. I guess there wasn't a lot of laws back then on doing something like that. Mm-hmm. And I called him. And I said, hey, this Rob? And he goes, yes, this is him. And I said, this is going to be hard, but this is your oldest. I'm your son. And he said, I don't have a son. And he said, please don't call again. And he hung up. So I never got to meet him. And at that point, I was like, well, fuck him.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. But, screw him.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a good idea back then to start being the dealer to help my mom and her friends and make money for my grandmother of heroin. So I started dealing at like 16. And then I started dabbing in it and started partying and doing it on weekends only. And then weekends became Monday. I was sick, and the rest is history, and I became my own best customer. And through this process, my mom and I started using together, and we started going to houses and sticking up drug dealers and tying them up and kicking in the doors. And down here, we ran rampant. We're doing armed robberies with stores and just crazy. And I remember at one point, she was up in New England, and I came down to Florida first. I wasn't in recovery. I was abstinent from drugs. I was training again, doing everything right. And I come down here with my grandmother, and she said, I'm bringing down your mom. And I said, I don't think that's a good idea. And she gets down here, and she says, I'm going to get clean, Keithy. I'm going to get clean. And she goes into Bark, because it was for free. We had no insurance. And I thought I was smart. I unplugged all the phones in the house so she couldn't call, because usually she'd call in an hour and say, all right, come pick me up. I'm done here. Mm-hmm. And probably that night or the next one, I get a knock from my neighbor. And my neighbor, I really didn't know this lady. She's freaking out. And she's like, you're Keith, right? Your mom's on the phone. And I was like, how did she get your number? And she goes, well, I introduced myself yesterday to her, and she got the number. So my mom knew probably what I was going to do in this house. She goes, her message to you is, if you don't come get her now, she's going to set herself on fire on the front lawn. So I picked her up, and she said, I'm going to teach you something about any state. Let's find a Martin Luther King Ave Street road. And the using continued for both of us for many, many years from then on.
Wow. That's crazy. I mean, I'm sure that there's a lot of stuff that we're going to glance over, but I think you did a great job at setting the tone of the upbringing. So your mom came to Florida. How old were you then?
I got down here, I was about 19.
What made you come here?
My grandmother has a sister in Hollywood, and she has this one in Lake City. And he's heard me say this all the time. When you're a New England person and you think of Florida, you think of Miami Vice and pink flamingos on the beach and shit.
Yeah.
I send you a picture.
He sends me pictures of pink flamingos now. And when I got down there wasn't one ever. I haven't seen one still on the beaches.
No, I've only ever seen him at the zoo.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so when I got here, I went to Lake City first, and then she brought me down to Hollywood, Florida, to be with her, live with her sister, to help her sister, because she had just lost her husband.
Okay. And so your mom comes down, the using continues. When did your mom ever get clean?
Yes.
My mom down here, wasn't she?
My mom ran a place down here called Foundations. And her girlfriend, Roseanne. And for women in Fort Lauderdale.
Oh, okay.
Many years ago. And I was out using, and I would go there to see them, and they were clean and they were doing great. And it's a shame because we crossed paths of being clean and not clean. So when I started to get clean, she was back using, I believe, after 10 years.
Really? Is she still alive?
No. She had cirrhosis of the liver.
From drinking?
Or just using dope.
Yeah.
Yeah. And her and her girlfriend, I moved them next to a store I own in Hollywood so I could keep an eye on them and help them as much as I could. See, the thing is, my grandmother raised me. She was my mom my whole life, and I worshiped the ground this lady walked on. And when she was in hospice and I was using, my grandmother had me, she was out of it. I go into the room, it's just finally her and I, she's crying. I mean, I'm crying. She's out of it. The cancer's gone through her whole body. She doesn't know where she's at. She doesn't know me. And I started to cry. And my grandmother comes out of it, and it's like, don't worry, Keithy, I'm going to come home to you. And so she goes, I need you to promise me something. She goes, I need you to promise that you'll take care of your mom. Using and being, nowhere to go and homeless almost myself at this point, I made that promise, not thinking I'd have to fulfill it. And then I got clean, and I had to fulfill that promise to my grandmother that I'd help any way I could. So I moved her next to my store. I had my employees go. I'd buy her any food she needed. I'd pay her phone. I offered to pay for her treatment, her halfway. everything, every bill, every event, she would literally come out of pocket for nothing for the first year if she'd just try, and she couldn't do it. And before she had passed, she called me and asked me where her girl was. She was with her girlfriend for 10 years, and she had overdosed at the house. And I had to go to hospice to tell my mother that she had overdosed, and she gave up and she passed.
And you were clean at that point?
Absolutely, yes.
So when did you get clean?
March 24th of 2009.
Was your mom wasn't clean then?
No.
But she got clean before then.
Yes.
And she stayed clean for 10 years?
Yes.
Dang. And then she relapsed, and then obviously things went the way that they went, and then I'm just trying to piece this together. And then grandma, the one that raised you, she goes into hospice. Your mom is using at this point. Grandma tells you you need to take care of your mom. At this point, you're clean. You've obviously started establishing.
That was way before, right?
No,
When
way before. Way before. My grandmother told me like many years before this. My mom was using and then got to 10 years after my grandmother died.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
all right.
when I say I promised this, there was no shot in hell I thought that I would be able to fulfill this promise because I was out using myself.
Yeah.
The thing that sucks is that my mom says, trying to help me get clean, her and her girlfriend would let me stay with them. And she'd say, you're using in front of me. You're using in front of me. You're using in front. I wasn't using in front of her, but I was using and going in my room and so on and so forth. And when she started to use, about 2 months later, I started to get clean. She said I was the cause of her relapsing, which we know through, I'm not the cause. I see what it sucks.
Yeah.
And then her and her girlfriend ended up going out and using again.
Steve, you have anything up to this point? You've been sitting there quiet.
I'm just a lot of things. Honestly, I did not know.
Really?
In terms of
which is shocking because Steve is my boy,
go-to.
so he's there for everything. If I'm speaking, he's there. And
how did you guys meet?
Michigan. Yeah. Well, we're in the same sponsorship family, and like again, I've seen Keith like.
Hang on a second. Let me just say this. There's a backstory to this Michigan, or not a backstory. It's a joke. I'm not going to say what the joke is. Okay, that's why we're laughing.
Yeah.
Anyways, go ahead.
It's interesting.
Well, you can email him and he'll tell you.
Yeah, email me and I'll tell you.
It's really interesting because I've known Keith since like I walked into the rooms. West Broward Club. Just all the meetings in like the South Broward area and stuff like that. I got clean. I went to treatment in Cooper City, and my sponsor.
Cooper City is like, or no, that's Cooper Town.
Cooper City. I don't know how would you describe, like a little more south of Davie or west of Davie. Davie's pretty west.
Yeah, a house there. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, it's But anyways, I got clean in that area, and I remember Keith. A couple of people are still around from that time.
So you guys met in the rooms?
Kind of, but not really. I would say we were more acquaintances. Like I'd see him.
Did you know each other? Because you said before we started recording, you said, Keith, you have 4 days more than Steve.
Like 5 days more.
Who's counting?
Yeah,
not Steve.
Did you guys know?
I say that because I think it's a cool thing.
No, it is. It is a cool thing. But did you guys know each other before getting clean?
No.
Okay, so yeah. So
I would say most of my using was in Pompano Beach and Coral Springs. It's funny how stuff is, though. For all we know, we passed each other in the hood, and like
shared crack
back
pipes.
in the day.
Yeah.
And well, when it came to crack towards the end, I was by I didn't like company. You know what I mean? But like, yeah. So what was I gonna say? Oh, it's interesting because like I'd see Keith. We really weren't. He had a sponsor. I think your sponsor at the time was this. His sponsor was my sponsor's sponsor. You know what I mean? So we were in the same family. I'm pretty sure that's how it worked. But I hung out with a lot of people I got clean with, like in treatment. And this is why, like, if the clients ask me, it's like, sure, like, you need friends outside of the treatment bubble too, like in the rooms, people are doing the right thing, all that stuff. Because I'm literally the only one that stayed clean, and these are like I thought were my lifelong boys. You know what I mean? We went to treatment together, and I have a lot of love, especially for one particular. I thought we were going to just be friends forever, all that stuff. So I didn't like one, and I open with this. I wish I kind of fellowshipped more, like in the rooms. You know what I mean? I stuck to my sponsor Warren like big time, which was good. Like I'm still clean, so it worked out. I had some of my friends from like my quote unquote normie life that were doing the right thing. So I didn't fellowship a lot with people, which was in my home group. Like at the time, the 10 p.m. meeting. But we ended up meeting in Michigan. I think we were around like 7 years clean. So.
And he was a little bit.
Okay.
We went to a spiritual retreat, and I remember going out to see a movie with Steve, and you're just talking about stuff, and this is where I was like, definitely not going to hang around with this kid. I asked him, I was like, so you got a girl? He's like, yeah, man, she's in recovery too. And I was like, usually when you talk that, you just show, if you don't know who it is, you just show a picture on social media. And I asked Steve to see her, and he's like, I'd rather not. And I'm like, why? And he's like, well, in case you dated her. And I'm like, what the hell is
I like
wrong
how you
with
gave
this
the PC
kid?
version of that.
Yeah, the PC version. Of course I did. So I got you, buddy.
I appreciate that.
A little bit. Anyway, so I was like, this is crazy. This is kind of weird. Like, and whatever. You know what?
Bro. And like
when did he end up showing you a picture of her?
Like years later.
Not even.
It was definitely years later.
I don't know. I want to go years.
Steve's like, the statute of limitations has gone past.
Yeah. No, it's when he was like at the point where he didn't care if someone did. Then he'd show the picture.
Got it. Okay.
You know how it is. I don't know how recovery was up here. Again, I got clean more down south.
Everybody was sleeping with one another.
You know what I mean? It's like I don't even want to know it.
I say that a lot. When I speak, I say, if this was sexually transmitted, we'd all get it.
Yeah, we'd be cured.
That makes sense.
I'm lucky. I as a newcomer got with a girl that was a newcomer, and today she's my wife.
You don't see that a lot.
No.
Yeah, so do as I say, not as I do.
Exactly.
In this case, I mean that's not recommended, but hey, listen.
We did stuff like we both knew when we go to meetings, don't sit next to each other and hold hands. Sit on different sides of the room. Don't read each other's step work. Have your own friends in recovery. So this way, if we don't work out, we don't feel that we can't go back to that meeting.
Yeah. Now, did you go to treatment?
No, I couldn't. My treatment was I was locked up. I got locked up in. I never had insurance. I come from nothing. So, I got locked up in Dade County. I say to this day, if that was the first place out of the 23 times I've gotten locked up, that I probably would have got clean right away. Dade is just a totally different thing. And while I was there was a gentleman there, and I was kicking methadone, Xanax, heroin, and crack at the same time in there. And he came up to me and said, hey, there's something out there that could help you. It's, Narcotics Anonymous. And I said, well, it didn't help you. You're in here with me in the same orange jumpsuit. He had missed a court case. They took me out of his room. I go into it's definitely my higher power, puts me in a cell with this guy, the 10 years. And he was out for like 29 days or 30 days. And he was going back to do 5 more years in prison. And I looked at him shocked, like, what the hell? And he goes, don't look at me like that. This is your life. And that night I sat there and thought about that, and he was right. And the next day they gave me probation because they wanted to give me more rope with the noose to hang myself. And, and I would be back continuously. And then Broward County put me on probation, and I changed one thing, everything. I told my ex I wasn't better than her, and she wasn't better than me because she was always my co-defendant. I said, we're not just good for each other. We just went our separate ways.
So you got clean in jail or prison or whatever?
Jail this time, yeah. Been to prison 3 times, but
how much time you been spent locked up?
Everyone asks me that. I mean,
well, that's because I've never been.
I know it's
up.
like I did 18 months. I've done a year. I've done 6 months. I've done 9 months. I've done
probably about 5 years.
Yeah, about 5 years. Yeah. Not a lot.
I think that's a lifetime.
That's how you know, like, you're an addict or you came through some shit, when it's like, oh, it's not a lot.
No, I mean, if you take it in increments, like today with the plunge, I did 30 seconds and then so it wasn't that bad. Yeah, it's not bad.
Well, that's a pretty good. So that guy that said that to you,
I wish. Oh, so I got out the next day. They give me probation, but you have to go back to the cell first. And he said to me, "Man, congrats! You'll be high today by 3:00." I said, "No, I never will again." And he goes, "Don't kid yourself." I wish I could find that guy.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you if you ever talked to him.
No, I wish I did. But the guy that told me about Narcotics Anonymous, I was out for like 30 days going to meetings. And when they gave me my property back that day, I deleted, I was crying. I deleted my whole phone, reset my whole phone. So I had no numbers. And I had a trash bag to my name. And I was living homeless under a bridge. And I went back there. My mom had picked up my cat that was with me while I was homeless, and I took my trash bag and I went to a meeting, and I met a guy, and they always say this in meetings that you'll sometimes hear it where they're telling your story. And this guy was from New England telling my story and getting high with his mom, and I was like, all right, how the hell did they set this up for me to hear this? And he had a halfway, and he said, I'll bring you in. I was like, I don't have any money. He goes, that's fine. He goes, we'll worry about that later. And they were like, we're going out to eat. And, I was shamed at that time because how I had nothing. And they said, well, we don't want you to pay. We just want you to come. And one day you'll do this for someone and pay it forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I continued on. But, I mean, there's a lot that's going on. I got clean, and my circle grew so small it's a period, people, if you become successful, they don't like it. Most people, if they use a relapse and you put boundaries, they don't like that. And my wife and I had started practicing traditions in our household. And one thing that stuck with me is that when I had gotten locked up one time, my ex was pregnant 9 months, and she got locked up like 2 weeks before I did. We had warrants out. And when I went in, I didn't know what happened to the baby. And a month later, I'm going to get sentenced. And I knew this girl that was in jail that was going up to the same judge as me. And she says, sorry about the baby. And I said, well, what do you mean? She goes, she lost it. The baby died. And
at 9 months?
Well, no, 9 months pregnant. My ex was locked up. She had the baby locked up. But I knew the baby was going to be born addicted to everything.
Oh.
And probably 30 minutes later, they gave me a year lockup. I went back down. 6 months into my sentence, I get called to court again. Usually, if that's not a good thing. If you're doing time and they call you again, that means they caught you for another crime and you're going to do more time. And they brought me to family court, and they said, we're here for the interests of a little girl that's 6 months old. And I said, I thought she had passed. They told me, and they said, well, whoever told you that didn't know what they were talking about. She's fine. And do you want her? I said, absolutely. I want my daughter. And they said, okay, we'll give you a year case plan, and you complete this and certain things, parenting classes, see her, drug tests, so on and so forth, and you'll get her back. So I said, okay, I have 6 more months to do with my sentence, and I'll start it right away. They said, perfect. So when I got out, I started going and doing everything that I should do. I was taking buses from Hollywood to Oakland Park and University, like 2 or 3 buses twice a week. I was visiting my daughter in a room where they would sit there with a clipboard and watch me. I remember grabbing, I got your nose, and the lady's like, don't do that. She could suffocate from that, and you'd have to just take it on the chin. In 6 months, my ex had gotten out and immediately had gotten arrested again, like the next day. So she had saw her a couple times with me. She had gone and visited, but she was back at it. And I was staying off everything, just trying to get my kid back. And 6 months out, they said, we have court next month. I thought it was a status hearing of how I was doing, and I was doing great. And they said, no, we gave you a year. We're taking custody. And they took her from me.
Why?
I never, because they gave me a year to get her back.
To be like fit, right?
Yeah, to be fit.
Yeah.
I never had her, but I had a chance of getting her if I'd completed this year, but I still had 6 months of my sentence. So they knew this, but they didn't say anything until the year was up. And they adopted her out. I left the court that day, and I went and got high. And trying to pretty much die.
Yeah.
And woke up with it. And when I got clean, no matter what was going on, and I have a beautiful life. I have beautiful kids. I love my wife and my daughters and my son, but I never could find my daughter, and I was looking for her. And through being locked up and having probation officers, I'm real close with my old probation officer. He's a buddy of mine. I have a lot of good people to know that started searching for me and so on and so forth, and they couldn't find her because I only had a first name. And she didn't have my name. And 3 years ago, on December 18th, my ex messaged me and said,
Oh, I thought today might have been the 18th.
Oh, that would have, yeah. December 18th, my ex messaged me and said, I found her. And my ex messes with me. She, she's still... I'm clean too. I just do what the doctor gives me and the alcohol, you know. So I went up and was pacing the floor because when I met my wife, I don't know why I would do this right away, but I said to her, "Hey, I have a daughter, and how would you feel about that if we were to work out?" And I don't know why I wouldn't. And she said she'd be my daughter.
Wow.
And I was pacing the floors upstairs, and I showed her the message from my ex, and I asked for the name, and my ex said, kick rocks. I'm not giving you the name. Let me talk to my kid. And my wife was like, hey, if you go on Facebook, she probably doesn't have a lot of friends because she keeps forgetting her password. Instead of resetting it, she just creates new Facebooks. And see who her friends are. And I knew my daughter's birth name we gave her was Teresa, but I knew her first name they were using was Katie. And I looked on Facebook and I saw a Katie. And the link was Teresa.
Wow. And
I messaged her and said, hey, I'm looking for a Teresa. And she responded, I believe, hi, Dad. And I fell on the floor crying. I had completed something. When you get clean, you have so much stuff in your past that you wreck. And I had completed something that was dear to me. Like, no matter how good I was doing in life, I knew there was a piece that wasn't fixed. And that was it. And not only did we get her, but I am blessed to have her and her mom, who's like family. Her adopted mom is like our family too. She, I know that I could only imagine she's in her 70s, her mom. The father's, I believe, almost 80. They live in up northern Florida. They're not getting any younger. Here she is. She knows she has family out there that she was adopted, and she's searching. And they told her, this is your mom's name. We don't know your dad's full name. And to tell you the truth, he's probably dead. He really used drugs hard. And I'm blessed that I have them. I just celebrated Thanksgiving up there. My wife and I and the kids went up. My little girl and little boy loved their older sister. She just graduated with a 4.3 GPA. They will be down here for Christmas. Her adopted dad had passed last year around Christmas. So when we were up there for Thanksgiving, my wife had told her, we're not just going to take Katie down. We need you to come with us. You're not going to be alone on Christmas. Mom. Her adopted mom. And we have this family unit now. That's incredible. Incredible.
Wow. That's a hell of a story.
It's just crazy to me too. It's like, that's why I hate seeing addicts in recovery give up. Not because there's a lot of people come in with a lot of burdens, not burdens, but issues or regrets or things they want to solve or puzzle pieces they want to put into the puzzle that they don't think will ever happen to them. You know what I'm saying? And then they somehow along the way, a lot of times using seems easier than just kind of just staying clean.
And they wake up the next day and they still have the same problems.
And exactly. And but because if you used any time before, that, you know, you never gave up. If you used any time before that, you wouldn't have had the miracle.
Yeah. I come to terms with maybe I was one of those that would stay clean, having lost a child and never been able to find her to show someone that they could stay clean. And my higher power had a totally different story for that.
Yeah.
And it's incredible how I believe if someone had a gun to my head or my wife's head and they asked my oldest which one needs to go, I'm dead. That's how good their relationship is. It's her older daughter, which is incredible. And I know her mom, her adopted mom, is at ease now, knowing that, God forbid, when time comes, she has her family. Which,
wow.
yeah.
She's what, 80?
She's like in her early 70s. If she's hearing this, I don't want her to smack me in the mouth because I said she was about 80. No, she's in her 70s. She looks about 60. I'll do that soon.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly.
Make up for it. Well, that's a powerful story. I think that, you know, what that shows is like you don't know what can happen. I mean, you really can't. What you do know for certain is if we kept living the way that we were living, we know what would happen.
Yeah, all bets are off.
All
now.
bets are
You don't even
off.
have
You
a
know,
chance.
nothing happens. There's nothing. You just live a miserable existence and get by with whatever means necessary. And when we get clean, you know, it's like, I mean, you could have never predicted any of this. You know, let me ask you, when you first got clean, I mean, did you have this? You're obviously doing very well for yourself. You're an entrepreneur. You do things like you make money. You got a house, kids. You know, sounds like you're a business. Well, I don't even know what businesses you have, but you have some businesses, and you do very well for yourself. Was that in the cards? Like, how did that? When you got clean and like you know, in your first maybe 6 months, did you see all this stuff happening?
No, when I got clean, I had an ankle monitor on, and when that happened and I met my wife, who's now my wife, Sarah, I was living at a halfway house and I had a bucket of change to my name. That's all I had. So I would count that change out to take a bus or so on and so forth. And if it was a good night, like a 5-star restaurant to us, my wife and I, to eat was Miami Subs. And it was like, yeah, that was like a 5-star, like we're going to treat ourselves to Miami Subs. And, but my grandmother, you know, even as a little boy, always told me, Keithy, you're the type of guy that if we drop you naked in the desert, you're going to come out covered in gold.
Yeah.
And I started just learning what most of us do, which is sales in recovery. And I started applying it and building my own company out of the halfway. And what's better than to have all the people in the halfway be sales reps?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the owner loves you because everyone's paying the rent on time.
Yeah,
which
right.
doesn't happen. It was so good for him that I said to him, I was moving out, and he said, "Why?" I said, "Well, I have a girl, and I want to move in with her." And he said, "Move her in." So my wife lived at the men's halfway with us.
Wow.
Yeah, when we were dating.
Again, do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah, exactly. But that's not suggested. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy.
So things just started kind of falling in place.
Yes, falling in place. My industry, I got out of one industry. I took a leap of faith. I asked 2 friends to each put in. I went through interferon for hepatitis C. My wife had gone through it, and then I had gone through it. That's horrible. It's like chemo.
Really?
Bad. Breaking out and oatmeal baths, so the skin, scabs on my skin. And I had asked 2 friends if they wanted to start this company. It was $500 a piece, $1,500. And I would start this little company in the electronic cigarette industry, manufacturing the liquid. And they said I was out of my mind. It was crazy. And my mother-in-law took us out to eat one night and said, "Here's $1,500. You have one partner in life. She's sitting right next to you. And I want $1,500 back, and we're done." She is, through the years, she had joked with me and said, "I messed up on that one. I definitely should have asked for something." Because we blew up. And My mother-in-law was great to me. We lost her a couple years ago. She took me in as a son. She had two daughters, and my wife and my sister-in-law, and she took me in as like I was her own son. And I remember meeting her, and you meet someone. I come from Park Bench. My wife came from Park Ave. So when you meet and you're new and you're not feeling good about yourself and you're in recovery and you feel less than. And I remember going out with her mom and sitting there and wanting to crawl out of my skin because I didn't know where I was. And she just took that all away right away. And she was our biggest supporters and always there for everything.
That's awesome.
Yeah, she was phenomenal.
So it turned into a big business, obviously.
Yeah, it turned into a big business. And then you have, like I said, the people that would hate on you, or if you go to a meeting, they want you to fix their vape, and I'm like, I'm not here for this. Or, hey, can I get a discount? And I'm like, this is ridiculous, I
had a client here a while ago, and he was pretty shady. He was selling vape juice out of the trunk of his car, and was selling it to our clients. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? He's like, I'm selling vape juice. And I'm like, let me see what you're selling. And he opens the trunk of his car. Now, and I don't know nothing about vapes or vape juice or nothing, so maybe you can educate me on this. But number one concern is it's not air controlled. And inside of a trunk of a car in South Florida, it probably gets to be about 180 degrees. Mm-hmm. And so that's problem number one. Maybe the vape juice breaks down into something that it shouldn't be. And then he pulls these bottles out, and it's got masking tape on it with black Sharpie marker, like strawberry, banana
flavors.
And I'm like, okay, I don't think this is a legit thing that you're doing here, so please stop.
The FDA definitely wouldn't.
They seem pretty
he
strict.
did. He stopped, but I don't know. I don't know where he was buying it from or nothing. And then I guess he was just rebottling it and selling it.
He was probably making it himself. We call it bathtub liquid.
Yeah.
So they're making it at home.
What is it? What is vape juice? Is it vegetable glycerin?
It's vegetable glycerin, which is derived from vegetables.
Okay.
Propylene glycol, which is used in fog machines, and it's also used for hospitals, how it's crisp in air. Nicotine, which is also in asparagus, broccoli, potatoes, and then,
I'm not addicted to any of those.
And then
maybe I should be.
And then food flavoring.
Yeah.
So 97% safer than smoking a cigarette. Absolutely.
Really? Okay.
But the thing is that, and this is a whole nother podcast. Once you start messing with someone like Big Tobacco and Big Pharma, they try to get rid of you immediately.
Yeah.
And that's what happened here. Yeah. So, but I mean, I've sued the FDA. I've won the lawsuit.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you've gotten they tried taking you out?
Oh, yeah. My wife submitted about 1.5 million pages for our company to the FDA to have our pre-market tobacco application to be legit. And they didn't even look at it. They just banned us. So we sued them in federal court and won it.
So are you good now?
I'm good now. But of course, still,
they're going to keep trying.
It's Big Tobacco.
Yeah.
You can't win them with them.
They're not.
And now in England, if you look this up, the vape shops are in the hospitals. They have a gift shop and a vape shop, and they say on their doors, "If you smoke, please do so across the street." And we suggest that you vape. It's 97% safer than cigarettes.
Really?
No carcinogens. No secondhand, no nothing. Yeah, and when we're off, Google it, and you'll see they're in. And I've done a lot of business. I used to have a facility in England. So yeah, it's because of how the government is operated. They lose money if you're sick. If you're not sick here, insurance is losing money.
Yeah. Well, Steve, you're not going to hear me say anything about you vaping no more.
Well, thank you.
I don't believe him.
Do you vape?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never did. I've taken a couple hits off vapes, and man, it felt like my lungs were going to collapse.
Of course. If you know what?
I was a smoker. I smoked cigarettes, but then I quit for years.
So you should never vape. Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't vape. I mean, and you should, vaping, some people use this, they have COPD, and then they go into their doctors, and the doctor says, my God, your lungs are like a 30-year-old's. What happened to you? And I quit. I quit smoking cigarettes and I vape. And it's much better for them. It's much better. So, but I mean, a lot of people do take it and they come down to zero and they quit, and it's easy. You know, my wife, she got pregnant, and it took us a long time of fertility to have our 9-year-old little girl. She was born. She was going to give me my 5-year medallion, and she called me and said, "Don't meet me there. My water broke. Meet me at the hospital. You're getting a kid." Oh. So I got a kid for my 5 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So my clean date became the eve of my daughter's birthday. So it's
so you guys don't have to battle it out.
No. It's my day. Yeah, she'd win anyway because on my clean day she's preparing for the next day.
Yeah. Wow.
But my wife was vaping and she said, "Hey, I need to come off because I'm pregnant." And I said, "No problem." And she came back to me and said, "I think I can go to zero now." Because I can break it down because I manufacture it. And I said, "Oh, babe, you've been on zero for a long time. You just didn't know." And she's like, "You son of a bitch."
Oh,
yeah.
Really?
So,
wow.
yeah.
So what do you have? You have like a place that you do that? Like
yeah, I have a store. I have a big facility that's ISO certified, 9001, I believe. Yeah, all regulated.
Nice.
So on and so forth. We break down nicotine and put it in the vapes.
Wow. Steve, do you smoke his vapes?
I do.
Yeah.
Are you sure?
What happened in this? What happened is disposables and Juul came around.
Juul's gone now, right?
Not really, but here's what happened: disposables, and I'm guilty of it. He's guilty of it. It's very convenient for you. You don't need that much nicotine. So they say it's 5%, which really means 50 milligrams. You need like 3 to 6 milligrams. That's what the regular vapes are. The worst when I was getting people off cigarettes the highest, not the worst that we would give someone was 24 milligrams. Again, disposables are at 50. The difference, why they can do that, because if you put a 50 in a tank and vaped it, it would rip your lungs out. Even someone like me that vapes all the time, Juul came up with this, it's like salt neck sodium that goes around the molecule and makes it feel like it's a 3 or 6. But you're becoming so addicted to a disposable.
Dude.
At 50 milligrams. And I'm guilty of this because it's easier. It's convenient. When we get off, I could just pull it out and vape it. And when it's done and it doesn't charge anymore, the flavor runs out, I can throw it away rather than having to fill the tank and the bottles.
Exactly.
Even though I manufacture the liquid that fills the tanks and stuff, it is and if you look it up on this site that follows regulations, all disposables are illegal in the United States besides a menthol flavor or a tobacco flavor. All of them. The thing is that they have no one to push and enforce these regulations. So FDA, I've spoke with them. Actual FDA agents, there's only 3 of them. They hire health inspectors and so on and so forth to go into these stores. Like I believe I am one of 6 companies that are legit to have product on the shelf in America. No one people have my product, but not all of them. You'd think I'd be booming, one of 6.
Yeah.
Most stores, the whole thing's illegal, but they still carry it because it's the hype stuff. It's the stuff that looks like kids would like it and so on and so forth. And it's just ammunition for the FDA to come after us. You know, when I would manufacture something, I'd take the label and I'd sit it on the desk at my house and say, "Babe," to my daughter, and say, "What's that look like?" Or if I was going to carry it in my store, because the stuff I make, I know I'm not trying to attract kids, and I'd put it out. If you have a company and you send your stuff, and she tells me it looks like Reese cup package, it goes in the trash. You know, we have kids. We don't want them to vape.
Yeah.
But again, you can't. When big tobacco funds most of the politicians in our country, and they tell these politicians to go against us, we're screwed.
That's tough.
Do you think it's going to get worse?
Yeah. You're always waiting for the next shoe to drop. You know, I'm in a great mood now. I could get in the car and drive away, and they say, "Oh, they just banned this," and you know, you're in a depressed state. That's why I'm moving on to different businesses and ventures and so on and so forth.
Wow, that's crazy. So the success that you've had, I mean, through your sobriety and through being clean and stuff, I mean, what do you attribute that most to? I mean, is it your passions, your drives, your energy, your helping others, combination of everything?
Yeah, definitely a combination of everything. For myself, a lot of us when we do get clean, we had somebody or something that was the motivation for us to get clean. So for me, it was a little different. Like no one ever thought I'd get clean. No one told me I needed help. No one said, I was by myself. My cat sure didn't tell me, and he was the only thing I had when I was on the street. My mom was, not around. She was in, I forget where she was when I got clean. Oh, she was clean, but she wasn't telling me to get clean. There was nobody. So when people gave up on me, and when I got clean, and they said, like the guy in jail that told me you'll be high today by 3:00, that impacted me. That I was going to prove him wrong. I was definitely not going. It was like, here, hold my coffee and watch this. So the motivation, my wife and I get a massive joy out of helping others. On my way here, I just saw this girl post that she had 10 years clean today. And I messaged her, and I remember I had spoken at a detox. I met this kid. When he got out, he called me, which is shocking because only like 5% do that.
If that.
Yeah, if that. Yeah, and when I picked him up with my wife, he had a girl with him. I was like, son of a bitch. This guy's going to mess up. And I pretty much was ready to say, ditch her, and you come to the meeting.
Yeah, you've seen the story before.
Yeah, and my wife was like, no, let's bring them both. And that girl has over 10 years, and she texted me today and was like, I remember you bringing me to the meeting. And that's the best joy. I feel like people are like, one of my greatest joys is, you have a kid that's going into treatment center after treatment center, and you hear, I've spent X amount of dollars on trying to get him clean and this and that. And then I click with them. I'm blessed to sponsor somebody, or we start hanging out, and then they stop asking mom for money to pay their rent. And then they say, hey, for the holidays, I'm going to Keith's house and I'm okay. And the mom's in another state going, what the hell's happening here? This kid's totally changing now. And when the best feeling I've had is these parents get off the plane to come see them one year, and they might have a year or two, or they're coming to give them a medallion, and they're like, where's this guy? I want to meet him. And they say, thank you. And that feeling of knowing that I'm helping someone sleep at night because their kids are not out there using, and they know they're safe.
Yeah.
It drives me. A lot of people are confused about addicts. They think we're drug addicts. We're a disease of instant gratification. Feels good, smells good, tastes good. I want it, and I want all of it. And sometimes when we put that into perspective and better use in our mindset of being clean and doing it the right way with spiritual principles that we learn in the steps, we can accomplish anything. Addicts are no one to mess with. Like we really have a drive that we had our whole life. I believe, I didn't have the problem with the drugs until I got clean. Then, on the drugs, I had no problem. The problem was when I got clean and realizing how to manage life on life's terms and how to separate it. It was just crazy. But through working the steps and being around people doing the same exact thing, it's much easier for me. If I'm going through it, I call Steve, or Steve can call me. And I'm not going to come to you and tell you what Steve said. And, it's great. It's a great thing.
And dude, I've seen that. That's one thing I really appreciate about you is like how many people you've like helped over the years. So many people. And sometimes and I get it because I've been doing this a while too. It's tough because there's a lot of heartbreak, But like, you've always been like reaching out to the newcomer, always doing service. I remember like your step series, like freaking 10 years ago, I think it was recorded, and just like constant service, and like almost like in an addict type way, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
But in a healthy thing, like you said.
I realized that like I'm getting old when some of my sponsees now have over a decade. I'm like, damn, right. I'm really getting old. I'm like, uh-oh. But it's great to see it, and it's great to see, them grow in recovery and give back and help in the ripple effect that this has is incredible.
Well, Keith, listen, for the sake of time, and I'm over here, I'm waiting for my wife to text me dropping my son off. I think this was fun.
It was
definitely
great.
want to have you back on for sure. I think there's a lot of things that we could extend and elaborate on and cover. And Steve, thank you,
Of course.
for joining us. And
Glad I was here for this.
I think the next episode is going to be more just like a ball busting,
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
fun episode.
that
you
might
know?
be like a disclaimer on.
You guys
Yeah.
could tell your some of your stories.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe you could tell us about Michigan.
Michigan.
yeah.
This guy, I tell you, what a shame.
Yeah.
So now, Keith, I really appreciate you coming on. Awesome
Thank you for having
message,
me.
and we'll have you on again.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, that is it for this episode of Real Recovery Talk. Thank you for tuning in. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you could always reach us. info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, it's info@realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message. That is it. We will see y'all later.